start the. All right, and welcome again. So my name is Tabitha Kinlaw. I'm the Nurse Manager for Education and Development at the Competency and Credentialing Institute, or CCI. And as I said, my co-presenter this afternoon, who will be monitoring the chat, will be Dawn Whiteside, who is our Director of Education. And we're going to talk about preparing for advanced certification in nursing professional development. Whoopsies. So first of all, we just want to thank everybody, all of the team at CCI, all of our colleagues and friends at the ANPD, or the Association for Nursing Professional Development Practitioners, which is based out of Chicago, Illinois. So, and all the volunteers. So it took, it was truly a labor of love to bring this credential to fruition. But, and a lot of people had a part in it, but we just want to send our sincere thanks to everyone for that. This is our disclaimer. As a certification organization, CCI, we are required to provide this disclaimer before any of our presentations. So again, no resources or study resources or prerequisites produced by CCI, or any prerequisites to any certifications. All right. And so our objectives for this afternoon, we're going to talk about accreditation of certification, maybe similar to what some of you will be familiar with as far as accreditation of your healthcare organizations. We're going to talk about the eligibility requirements for the NPDA-BC credential, the components of that credential. It is a portfolio-based credential, so we're going to talk about those submission requirements that you have to have. And then also using our learning management system at CCI so you can complete and submit your portfolio. So we're going to go ahead and dive right in, okay, and talk about accreditation of certification. So many of you, and I'm not sure who all we have in the call, if it's all of our nursing professional development peers and friends, or even if it's some of our perioperative educators and professional development specialists from the perioperative arena. But you have your membership organizations. So for those of you in the perioperative side, this may be AORN. Those of you in nursing professional development broadly, it would probably be the Association for Nursing Professional Development, or maybe you're a member of both. And ANPD's mission is to advance quality healthcare by defining and promoting nursing professional development, because as we know, we have to all be continued lifelong learners to provide our patients with the best care possible. And the goal of ANPD is to really be acknowledged as an expert voice and advocate for nursing professional development practice. So that's the membership side, if you will, for nursing professional development. The credentialing side of it, if you think about some of the other certifications that you may hold, for example, if you hold NPDABC and you've taken the nursing professional development exam, that was the credentialing agency that bestowed that credential to you is ANCC, or the American Nurses Credentialing Center. For those of you that may hold certificates such as CNOR, CSSM, CNAMB, and things like that, which are the more perioperative focused, those were bestowed by the credentialing organization known as Competency and Credentialing Institute, or CCI, which is based out of Englewood, Colorado. And then again, as I mentioned in the objectives, accreditation. So just like healthcare organizations look to be accredited, the certification realm also looks to that. And we have two key accreditors there for our certificates, which is ABS&C and NCCA. So the Accreditation Board for Specialty Nursing Certification and the National Commission for Certifying Agencies. So as far as credentialing, as we talked about, the ANCC, or the American Nurses Credentialing Center, a lot of different certifications there, and the one you're primarily familiar with them is probably NPDABC. And I think they actually just changed that acronym about a year ago. So instead of it just being RNBC, you can actually put that nursing professional development. So people truly do know that board certified credential that we hold. And then of course, CCI, as I mentioned, and there's kind of a picture there of the various certifications that we offer. And you can see one of our newest ones there for new perioperative nurses at the bottom, which is CFPN, to really get them started on their professional journey for those in the perioperative arena. And then of course, the newest credential that we are proud to be offering, and that is NPDA-BC, or Nursing Professional Development Advanced Board Certified. So those of you that are nursing professional development practitioners, you know that there's the practitioner level or the general level, and there's the specialist level. So with NPDA-BC, we are really looking at those nursing professional development practitioners that have the knowledge and the experience and that are practicing at that advanced level according to those scope and standards. Okay. And then as far as, ANCC, we've talked a little bit about that. They have the accredited providers as far as some of you remember it as CEs or CNEs, contact hours, but that nursing continuing professional development, or NCPD as it's being called now. They also are integral in the implementation of the PTAP, or Practice Transition Accreditation Program, for nurse residents and nurse fellowships. And then of course, one of the big buzzwords now that we hear in healthcare that really helps us all to collaborate and provide the best care possible is that joint accreditation for interprofessional continuing education. So with accreditation for certifications, we talked about the two accrediting bodies, ABS&C and NCCA. So as I mentioned, the NPDA-BC, this new credential, it is portfolio based. So with that, it will be, when that time comes, it will be accredited under ABS&C, and you can see they have a whole book there, or guide, if you will, as far as the accreditation standards. One question that some of you may be having already, and I'll go ahead and just kind of answer that because it has come up, is it currently accredited? And the answer to that is no. Typically, though, with certifications, we're looking at about a year before that accreditation comes to fruition. So that is certainly the goal, and we will be moving forward. But again, that'll be about a year out before we look to accreditation of NPDA-BC. So now we know what NPDA-BC is, but we need to know what are the eligibility requirements. Who can apply for this new credential? So as far as eligibility, first of all, we look to licensure. So as you can imagine, the candidate does have to hold a current unencumbered nursing license in a state or territory of the US, right? Or its equivalent to another country. And then as far as education, this individual will need to hold a master's or higher degree in nursing or a related field. Okay? So if your graduate degree is in maybe a master's in healthcare administration, then your baccalaureate degree would have to be in nursing. All right, a little bit more for eligibility here. So obviously, because this is the advanced level, this candidate is going to also have to already hold an accredited certification in nursing professional development, such as, for example, the NPDA, the NPD-BC. And that will show that we have that entry-level knowledge and skill set to serve as an NPD, or nursing professional development practitioner. In addition to licensure and your education and certification, you also have to have the experience. For a candidate, you will have to have a minimum of 4,000 hours of active practice at the nursing professional development specialist level. And that would have been within the last 5 years. And as you all know, NPD practice settings are in any practice and or learning environment. The role is typically very broad for nursing professional development practitioners. And then, of course, demonstrating leadership, that you do function and have functioned in those 7 roles of the NPD specialist. And we'll look at those. And for those of you that are familiar with the model, the NPD practice model, you'll be very familiar with those roles as we start looking at those. So just a couple of quick questions here to kind of get some ideas of the group. A little poll, if you'll just answer kind of in the chat, and Dawn will kind of monitor that. How many of you are currently certified in nursing professional development? Again, an example of that would be NPD-BC.
Those are yeses from a few of our guests.
Wonderful. Excellent. So you already have one of those criteria that we talked about down, which is wonderful. And for those of you that don't, obviously, you know that's a criteria, and that's probably already a part of your professional development plan, I would imagine. So best of luck to you on that. How many of you currently have a master's degree or higher, meeting that eligibility criteria?
More yeses.
Wonderful. And another polling question for those of you, do you currently have 4,000 hours of active practice at the nursing professional development specialist level within the past 5 years?
A couple more yeses.
All right. Well, it looks like we have some folks that are going to be very interested, hopefully, in our the next topics as we go through the criteria, because some of you are already well on your journey and have the fundamentals that you need. So for those of you who are very familiar with the nursing professional development practice world, this is the practice model from ANPD. As you know, it is a system model. So you have your inputs, your throughputs, and your outputs. Obviously, our inputs are our learner. We do those environmental scans. And then, of course, our role as NPD practitioners. And we have those 7 key roles that are listed for you there on the left-hand side of the screen. And then the 6 throughputs that are critical to our role as a nursing professional development practitioner, with the ultimate goal, obviously, continued growth, competence, and development of the individual, and then ultimately the protection and safety of the public. So this portfolio program is built around this model. And you'll see that here in just a few moments. So the throughputs that we talked about, there are 6 of those. Competency management, education, onboarding, orientation, continued role development, professional development, research, EBP, and quality improvement. And then, of course, collaborative partnerships. And then, of course, you have the 7 roles there. Those were the ones on the left-hand side. We are learning facilitators. We're also change agents, mentors, leaders, champions for scientific inquiry. We advance the NPD specialty, and we also serve as partner for practice transitions, whether that be during the onboarding and orientation phase, or maybe someone's actually transitioning to a different specialty or a role. And then, of course, the standards of practice, which most of you are probably very familiar with from ANPD. And what we'll be looking for in your portfolio is evidence that you function at those advanced levels in all of those standards and with those throughputs and roles. So another poll for the group, and again, this is a multiple choice, if you will, A, B, C, or D. Where can you find the required competencies for an advanced practitioner in the role of nursing professional development, or for a nursing professional development specialist?
We're getting a C and a B. All
right. Well, you can give yourselves a hand because that is absolutely right. That is where you would find typically with B, of course, the NPD scope and standards of practice. That is definitely, that spells out very succinctly and clearly the generalist roles for those scope and standards, as well as the specialist roles, which is what is required in this portfolio submission. And then, of course, what will be available when we launch this credential, there will be a candidate handbook that will be available to you from CCI that will outline a lot of the material that we are going over this evening. Okay. So now we're going to look at the components of the credential. So when you get to your application, obviously, we're going to validate your nursing license, the fact that you are certified in nursing professional development, your work experience, again, those 4,000 hours, your nursing degree, the master's degree. You'll submit your resume, your CV, and attestation from you that all of the information that you are supplying is correct. And there will be randomized audits. So as always, with your nursing license and other certifications that you may hold, making sure that if any of the items are requested of you, that you are able to produce that documentation should you be audited. And then the application phase. So you can see here when you go into our learning management system, you'll see a screenshot of what the dashboard will look like. The yellow is obviously where things need to be submitted, and of course green meaning go. So you can see here where you see the check marks. Those things have been met. So you would upload your RN license, your proof of your credential, such as NPDABC, your degrees, and then of course attesting to your work experience. And then you will move forward through with the portfolio. So with your portfolio, what you're going to submit is going to be, you're actually going to have 6 key documents, if you will, in your portfolio. Okay, and they will address those 6 throughputs that are in the middle of that practice model. There's going to be 3 exemplars and 3 activity tables. And then those NPD roles that are on the left-hand side, those 7 roles, those have to be addressed in some format in totality across the 6 throughputs. So in every one of your exemplars and tables, you don't necessarily have to address how you were a change agent, but at least at one of those, you will have to prove where you were a change agent, for example. And then, of course, the standards of practice. Again, in totality, we will need to see all those standards of practice and competencies demonstrated at that advanced level as it's stated in the scope and standards. So another quick poll here. How many of you have ever written an exemplar to represent work that you have done?
We're split yes and no. And does an abstract count?
And Dawn, feel free to share your opinion. I think in looking at some with the exemplars and the beta, they're a little more detailed. Would you agree?
Yes. An abstract is more of a summary, which the exemplar will be, but there are specific requirements throughout the exemplar that will require more detailed information than a summary would.
And we're going to give you kind of a sneak peek, if you will, into that and what will be expected in those exemplars here in just a few minutes. So here's an example here with the exemplar. So you will see this, you will have a Word document with the exemplar with the instructions there. As you can see, the recommended word count is good, so a little bit larger than an abstract. It's going to be 600 to 1,200 words. Now, if you submit a 1,300 word exemplar, you're not going to be penalized for that. So obviously we want you to be clear and succinct, but it does need to have significant enough detail to show that you have met all of the different roles, throughputs, as well as those standards of practice at the advanced level. And then, of course, any referencing that is needed would need to be provided in the APA format. And of course, we're using the 7th edition now. So an example of the throughput looked at here would be education. That's one of those 6 throughputs. And then, of course, it has where you're going to give a brief description of the gap. All of you in NPD are familiar with that. What is your current state? And then obviously your desired state. Here, then you're going to come up with your goals, and those goals need to be in SMART goal format. There will be various resources for you also to help you with that, that you can download to help with those things. And yes, we're welcome, Laura, for clarification on that. What you implemented, what you did in that, you're going to also include your role in the intervention, participants, stakeholders. So one of the things I want to really highlight there is a lot of times we're very collaborative in nursing, especially in nursing professional development. We know it's all about collaboration, but really on these exemplars, we need to see the I statements. Make sure that you're really fleshing out your specific role when you're writing these exemplars, and the peer reviewers can really pull out specifically what you did and your contributions to the different initiatives. And then, of course, looking at outcomes, evaluations. What's the level? Do you think about Kirkpatrick's level of evaluation, showing that, and again, the outcome. What's the so what, right? And if for some reason your outcome was not met, then you would detail that out as well. And then you're going to go into the roles and how the reflection of those different roles and how your performance represented that advanced level, and then also going through the various standards. So this will be kind of the requirements. You'll have this document, you can download it, and of course, type directly in to that document, removing any extraneous information. And then you'll have 3 of those. So 3 exemplars. So you're going to pick 3 of those throughputs in the middle of the model. And then the other 3 throughputs, you're going to build activity tables where you will address those throughputs. So these will not be ones that you've addressed in your exemplar. So what evidence demonstrates, again, your performance at the advanced level of practice? And again, APA formatting and being very clear in your writing. If additional evidence is needed by our peer reviewers, they will certainly request that, and we will communicate that to you. So the activity table is not going to be, it's going to be a little less dense as far as information. So you'll have your throughput, for example, education, and then of course a brief description of how that throughput was addressed and your responsibility. And then you're going to identify all of the throughput roles. You're going to list out the standards of practice that you addressed in fulfilling that role. And then you will link your evidence or put your evidence in the side. And we'll show you some examples of that. Evidence of that may be maybe a link to an article that you had written, or maybe it's a link to some type of document or something that you created. But we'll show you some examples of those here in just a minute. So then what happens as far as your submission and the analyzing of that? So for those of you, if you are already a member of CCI and you have a CCI profile, you do not have to complete another profile. However, if you are not, you will go and complete a CCI profile and start your application. And then you are automatically enrolled in the portfolio assessment once your application has been vetted, approved, and you have paid the fee. And so some of you, the next question is probably going to be the fee. The fee is $375. Are any of the folks that are looking at this credential, are any of you currently a CNOR or certified already with CCI with a credential? All right. It looks like we have a couple that do hold CNOR. So thank you. First of all, congratulations. And so with that, your fee will actually be, I believe, and again, if the rest of the team that's on the call, please chime in if I'm incorrect, but there is a $75 discount for those that hold the CNOR credential. So your fee would be $300 versus the $375. So you'll be enrolled in the portfolio assessment. You will get an email with links to your coursework where you can upload the items into the classroom. One of the things we did want to mention specifically, again, all of these portfolios are reviewed by our peer reviewers, many of which already were in the beta test and hold the NPDA-BC credential. And one of the things that they have brought to the attention is just to remind all of us that will be submitting in the future to make sure that our work is professional, giving a lot of attention to our writing, our grammar, our punctuation, and just kind of remembering that we, especially as advanced NPD practitioners and being that disseminator of knowledge and professionalism in our organizations, that we kind of set that bar. So making sure that we are submitting very sound, professional looking documents. Okay. So as I said, you will get an email when you are enrolled. This is a copy of the email for the introduction. So it'll give you a welcome, and it will tell you where you can download the link and then log in and get started on your coursework. And of course, you'll be writing a lot of these documents probably in Word, and then going in and uploading them into the system once you have them crafted how you'd like them. Another example of an email here, this is for the exemplar, okay? And again, you get to pick which of those throughputs in the middle you want to write your exemplars on. So you get to pick the 3, and then you will pick the other 3 that you will complete the tables on. I had a question the other day. Someone asked if they could submit more than 3 exemplars, just in case maybe one exemplar didn't quite meet criteria or there were issues, but the system will only allow you to submit 3 exemplars and 3 tables. So when you get ready to start crafting your tables and writing your exemplars and knowing what the criteria are, really think about all of the great things that you guys have done and where it would fit best as far as in an exemplar or in the activity tables. Okay. Everything needs to be de-identified. So when you submit your documents into LearnUpon, into our LMS or learning management system, make sure that you have de-identified everything. Instead of using your name, if on the documents and files, you will use your CCID number, and that ID number will be unique to you. That is how those will go to our peer reviewers, so they will not know who the individual is that is submitting that they're reviewing. So, and the standardized abbreviation. So you could use your CCI number, and for exemplar 1 or E1, role development. Okay, your CCI ID number, activity table 3, AT3, education, if that's one of the ones that you choose for your exemplars or activity tables. So just a little bit more meat as far as what we are asking or looking for as far as the exemplar requirements. So again, we talked about, again, that identifying that gap. What was the problem? What's the background of the issue? That's going to really be what you're going to provide in kind of that first item there on your exemplar. And then, of course, your SMART goal statement. Again, we do have a resource to kind of help you with crafting that to make sure that you have all of those components when you come up with your SMART goal. The implementation piece, this is where you're going to give a brief description of your work, your interventions, the initiatives that you came up with to meet your goal and move you from that current state to that desired state. And as we mentioned before, really making sure you're including your role. You do need to list participants and stakeholders that you involved. Definitely make sure that you do that, but really make sure that we can see very clearly what your role was in this intervention or initiative. And then looking at outcomes, what were the results? What were the changes? and hopefully really showing measurement there, because that's something we need to be doing at the advanced NPD practitioner level. Behavioral changes, practice changes, what's the impact on patient care, the ROI, going to that highest level evaluation of return on investment. And again, include if they were met or not met, and if they weren't met, why? Because sometimes we know that the outcomes are not what we anticipated, but we still need to articulate the issues there and why they were not met. The fifth thing on your exemplar is the reflection, and you're going to look at those roles. And all of those roles that were performed in the activity, you'll list those out and then write a brief reflection on how your performance represented the advanced level of practice in that NPD role. And thinking about those 7 NPD roles there on the left-hand side of the model. And then you'll do the same thing with your scope and standards. You'll go through the different standards there, list those out that were included in that activity and were touched upon. And then, of course, write a reflection on how your performance met or exceeded the competencies of the advanced NPD specialist. So when you're looking at those standards in the scope and standards book, when you're writing your reflections, make sure you're looking at how you exemplified those advanced roles, because simply the general role is not enough to meet criteria for advanced practice certification. And when you write your exemplars or your tables, additional evidence may be requested. So your portfolio will be reviewed by 2 peer reviewers who will not know the identity of you, nor will they know the other peer reviewer that is reviewing your submission. But we will look at those, we'll collate those, make sure, see where there are gaps or discrepancies. And if the 2 reviewers do request additional documentation, Dawn and I will reach out to you, let you know that, give you the opportunity to come up with some additional documentation, tell you where maybe the opportunities for improvement were, and allow you you are allowed 1 resubmission. If for some reason on your second attempt you are not successful, you would be required to wait 1 year before reapplying. All right, so a couple of examples here as far as on the exemplars. Okay, so for the background and the problem, this is an example. So you can see in this the I statements that we talked about. I oversee, I identified. So really, again, your role, us being able to see your role, is very important. Okay, and this is for the assessment and diagnosis piece of the exemplar. Again, giving that background and showing us where that gap is. And then, of course, you can see that this individual, through her work or his work, did identify that there needed to be a more robust evidence-based practice module to be added into their nurse residency curriculum. And then, of course, the goal statement. And again, these do need to be in SMART goal format. And you'll see by this example here where this individual has done that and articulated their goals very succinctly. Okay. So the goal statement is specific. So the RN residency EBP curriculum, we know exactly what it is. Measurable. They're looking at, you think about Kirkpatrick's model. Again, level 3 and 4 is really, hopefully, as advanced NPD practitioners, we're evaluating, not just on that level 1 or level 2. So we're going to look at hopefully increased engagement there. It's achievable. 1 relevant practice recommendation is made to present to current and future nurse residents by former nurse residents. And that's, so again, you want to make sure that your goal there is achievable and that it's realistic. So here the nurse residencies onboarded 111 nurse residencies in 2020, and they can engage in EBP and develop skills to present 1 practice recommendation within their first year. So that's realistic. Obviously, it's very relevant, as EBP is a critical component of transition to practice in RN residencies. And then, of course, timely. within that year time frame certainly meets that criteria. And then we get to the implementation or the intervention of the initiative. And again, really including your role. And you also need to make sure that you are talking about all of the different stakeholders that you pulled in. And it may be stakeholders that are not just nurses, because as we know, in a lot of what we do, it takes an interprofessional team, but it takes an interprofessional team as well. But again, the I statements, so it's very clear what your role was in the implementation of that intervention or initiative. And the outcome evaluation, you can see there that where they have demonstrated that. Obviously, the pandemic has presented a lot of challenges for folks in healthcare, especially in nursing professional development. So due to the pandemic in this situation, the engagement of the EBP topic exploration was challenging, but it looks like they had 4 nurses that moved forward. So while that maybe was not the outcome that they were hoping for, they have very clearly identified what the outcome was and the challenges and why the outcome maybe was a little bit less than optimal. And then, of course, they have talked about there, as you can see, they have submitted for a poster presentation at the local nursing research day, thereby ensuring dissemination of the research, which again is another role of the advanced NPD practitioner. And then, of course, the role reflection. This is very important. So those different roles, and again, every role may not be delineated out in each exemplar or activity table, but they do need to cover across the board. They need to be addressed at some level where you perform that role. So here, this individual has listed the roles of learning facilitator and being a champion for scientific inquiry, and has provided a brief summary of how he or she met those different and fulfilled those different roles via this initiative. And the last part of your exemplar is that standards reflection, again, at the advanced level. So you can see here where they have addressed the standards of practice competency for standard 5 with implementation. And then, of course, on the right-hand side, you can see where this individual detailed out how they met the advanced level of that particular standard and or standards. Now the activity tables. Again, a little less detail in these documents as far as the activity tables, but it really does still require a high level of evidence. Again, showing that you have met those throughput roles in the NPD model, that you fulfill those 7 roles, that you meet the advanced standards of practice, and that you are competent at that advanced practice level. Again, same thing with the exemplars. Our peer reviewers can certainly request more information for the activity tables to validate your successful achievement if they feel that that is warranted. So on the activity table, as we move across that table, if you remember when we showed you that earlier, you're going to give a brief description of that activity that you're going to be involved in, again, for the 3 throughputs that you select there. How does it align with the roles? And you'll describe that. How does it align with the role of change management? How does it align with the role of partner for practice transitions? And then, of course, listing the standards of NPD practice and advanced competencies that that particular activity addresses. And then you will provide the evidence of your role, of those various roles. Again, this may be a link to an article. It may be an article citation that you were involved in. It may be some type of document, some type of certificate. And a lot of people have just linked those various sources of evidence, if you will, into their activity tables, and the reviewers are able to pull those up. And the standards of practice and NPD practice and competencies. Again, evidence of meeting those standards at the specialist level. So I think one of the, if I had to make a recommendation, I would say definitely your scope and standards are going to be your friend when you are trying to highlight, making sure that you are performing again at that advanced level. And here's an example of a throughput table. This one's for collaborative partnerships. So you can see this individual gave us a brief description of his or her role there, obviously denoting some of the key standards within that, listed the roles. So they meet 4 of the 7 roles in this particular throughput: learning facilitator, leader, champion for scientific inquiry, and an advocate for the NPD specialist. And then, of course, they list the standards there in column 4, and then you can see the evidence over on the right-hand side. So maybe it's a flyer for the book club that maybe you created, or maybe it was a CME, CNE planning form. Okay, so just because that's kind of small, we've just kind of blew this up just so you can see it a little bit better for the activity table. So here with this one, this is just, again, the description that this individual submitted. And again, seeing those I statements there. What was your role? The roles for that particular activity table, the standards, and then, of course, your sources of evidence that you can see they have linked here. So now we're going to take a look at the learning management system, where your portfolio, we're going to upload your portfolio and it will be scored. So here's a picture here. So when you get into your course, into your classroom, you'll have an introduction. Okay, so you'll get that email link that we showed you earlier. You'll have this introduction here. And then, of course, you can click Start, which is over here on the right-hand side. If you look here on the left-hand side, you'll see you're enrolled in one course. You have 3 different learning paths, but again, you will click Start and you are on your way. So this is the NPDA-BC introduction. So you'll get that link, enrollment email link. You'll be able to download the welcome document. This is going to give you an overview of that portfolio and the requirements, and really help you as far as guiding you with the additional documents that you will need to submit. And you can see there you have your instructions and resources, and also highlighted the scope and standards of practice for the NPD specialist. And then, of course, in the upper right-hand side, we have the Start button. So you will click there, and it will take you to the introduction, again, to those different files where you're able to pull those up and download. You'll see the little download button right there highlighted in yellow. And then, of course, you are able to scroll all the way down to access and to see that information. Then you will be able to go to, once that's completed, the introduction, you can go on to your next module. As we said, there's a lot of different resources for you there that you can download that will hopefully help you on your journey to NPDA-BC, the welcome and getting started. We have the list of the standards of practice, obviously, from the scope and standards, definitions, the throughputs. What are our responsibilities? What are those roles and those definitions for us as NPD practitioners or specialists? And how to write and how to really craft good SMART goals. And then it will give you the rubrics. So one of the things we have to do is to tell you the criteria. So you will see those scoring rubrics that your peer reviewers will be using. So you will know exactly what the expectations are and how you will be evaluated. So you'll have a sample scoring rubric for the exemplar as well as for the activity tables. So scope and standards, the scope and standards of practice is read only. So this is a document you will not be able to print. Okay, so you will actually need to read that on your device. But many of you may actually have a copy of the scope and standards already. Okay. So once you have gone through and completed the introduction, you will get a congratulations that you can see here at the bottom of the screen. If you do need to refer back to this particular component, you can certainly do that. Okay. And then you'll see here on your dashboard in your courses, you have your different learning paths. Obviously on here on the bottom is the introduction that we just looked at. If you go up one, you have your exemplars where you can start those. And then of course your activity tables where you can actually start those. So you will have to complete all of those components. Now, you get to select and enroll yourself into which exemplars you want to do. So as we mentioned, you're going to do 3 exemplars, 3 activity tables, but you have to make sure 3 of those are of the throughputs and the other 3 throughputs would be for your activity tables. But you enroll. So you have the options here. So you would enroll in 3. So I may say I want to do collaborative partnerships, competency management, and education for my exemplars. So I would enroll in all 3 of those. So that means my activity tables would be the subsequent 3. And then, of course, once I've enrolled, it will give me the option to launch my exemplar. And then I go to the start here. My exemplar here is Research, EBP, and Quality Improvement. I click on Start. It's going to give me a brief overview, and then I can click Start again. It will move in. I will have my instructions where I can download. Again, you can see the highlighted portion there. So you can download it, type right into the document. It's going to give me my instructions. Once I pull that document up, I can type in there and go to my responses. So you're going to download the assignment document. That's going to be your template. That's where you're going to complete your assignment. So it will need to be submitted in that Word doc. It should not be free texted into the learning management system. Once you've completed the assignment in full, you'll click on your responses and notes, and you will upload that completed exemplar. And again, that exemplar does need to be de-identified using your CCI ID, as well as whether it's exemplar 1, exemplar 2, so on, or activity table AT1, AT2. And then, of course, you will submit. And you will do that for all 3 of your exemplars. So you can see here highlighted where you will upload your file. Then, of course, you can save. This is going to be what the final validation scoring is going to look like that you will receive. So once you've uploaded, you'll upload your 3 exemplars, your 3 activity tables. We will be alerted that that has happened. It will be assigned to 2 peer reviewers. They will go through and review the documents, and they will let us know what their scoring is for you. And if there's any, so you'll get a document like this. If there's any need for additional information, we will let you know that. It will be highlighted in red font when you receive your final validation scoring correspondence from us. And then hopefully you will also get the email and the document that has the green here that all of the throughputs, responsibilities, and roles, as well as standards, were successfully addressed, and that you will have achieved the NPDA-BC credential. And that credential will be conferred for 5 years. So you can see here, you've got information to contact Dawn or myself if you have any questions, and then it will list for you the different throughputs and if it was met or unmet. Again, if there's anything that was unmet that we're going to need additional documentation or clarification for, that will be highlighted in red. And then, of course, it will show on your standards of practice. Your peer reviewers will provide to us whether or not each of those standards were met and where they felt that those standards were met throughout your exemplars and your activity tables. Okay, so your other standards, going again through all 16 of them. This is a sample if you had to have additional information to submit. So in this particular instance, you can see on exemplars 1, 2, and 3, this individual will need to submit more information with that. As you can see also is when you look down at this individual's standards, need a little bit more information into how they, at the advanced level, they addressed ethics. And then also on professional practice evaluation, how they addressed that. And then as you can see underneath all of the different tables, we do give a summary and then it is put in red exactly what you need to resubmit. When you do resubmit, you need to make sure that you when we request that you send us the additional information that we request. We need that to be embedded into your exemplar submission. So make sure that any track changes, don't leave it in red font or a different color font. Make sure all track changes are removed. Again, it's de-identified. It needs to look like a clean submission. So in this particular instance, the individual didn't have any issues with their activity tables. So there was no additional work they needed to do there, but they did need to resubmit a revised exemplar. Actually, there are 3 revised exemplars. But again, de-identifying everything needs to look like a clean submission, because when we get those additional documents, we will send that along with your original activity tables to a third peer reviewer. They will review those and as if it were a brand new submission. So that additional reviewer that's used will not know that that is a second submission for you. So again, completing those tables, if it's a new submission, it is sent to that third reviewer as an entire packet. That really helps us to keep the scoring unbiased. And that's another reason why we like to de-identify who the individuals are, to make sure that we are being very fair and valid with our scoring. So again, as we mentioned, it will be reviewed by 2 peer reviewers. Again, if we feel we need additional documents or information to amplify, clarify, or verify your submissions, our peer reviewers will let us know that. If there is a discrepancy between the 2 scores and our peer reviewers for some reason are not in agreement, we will consult a third reviewer. And again, you have that opportunity to resubmit your documents one time. If for some reason they do not pass review, that second submission, you would need to wait 1 year before you reapply. And then recertification, as I mentioned, this certification is conferred for 5 years. And how we're actually going to do recertification is via professional points. Since we do have some of the CNORs on the call this evening, you'll be very familiar, hopefully, with professional points, as we've been transitioning to that in the perioperative world for some time now. So we'll be seeing those things in the store, in the CCI store, in different ways that you can gain, obviously, those professional activity points. But in addition to your 300 points, you will submit an activity table demonstrating all 6 throughputs at the advanced level in that previous 5 years. And that's going to be worth 100 of your 300 points. So you won't have to do exemplars again, but you will do an activity table for each of the 6 throughputs, detailing that out. You will get 100 points for that. Your other 200 points will come through various professional activities. And obviously, again, please stay tuned, looking at the CCI website and the candidate handbook for some of those options that will be available to you for recertification when that time comes. So another polling question. So a lot of information, probably felt like we had a fire hose there, but based on what you've learned today, how likely are you to pursue advanced certification as an NPDA-BC in the next 6 months? So A, don't plan to pursue it. B, not sure, but I'm thinking about it. C, absolutely, I'm ready to apply. Sign me up. And then D, plan to apply, but it might be more than 6 months from now.
We have a couple D's and a D-ish. I love that.
I like the D-ish, yes.
Yes.
All right. So, any questions?
A couple of clarifications. We did have one question, just to clarify about the 5 years and 4,000 hours. That does need to be in the last 5 years. So your experience, the evidence you present of your projects, your work, and the 4,000 hours all must be in the specialist role in the previous 5 years. One question we had last time we presented this, Do I have to be an NPDBC or certified in nursing professional development for a certain amount of time before I can apply? And the answer is no. We know that a lot of people are already working at the advanced specialist level, whether you have a certification right now or not in nursing professional development. Having that certification is a requirement before you apply, but there is no limit. So if you have all of the work you've been doing, it's 5 years, you have 4,000 hours, and you get your certification in nursing professional development this year, January 1st, whenever, you can apply for the NPDA-BC. Other clarifications, there is your application is kind of a pre-approval process. So uploading your license information, your work experience, your resume and CV, and proof of certification is your pre-approval. Once that has been confirmed, then you will pay and apply, complete the full application to pay. If for some reason you are not successful and you do not pass, there are no refunds. Just so you know that part. And like Tabitha said, you would have to wait a year to apply, and that would be a new fee. I'm trying to think of any other common questions we had last time, Tabitha.
So for those of you that are the D, so we're looking at about 6 months out or ish, we'll let you all know that there will be, especially if some of you are a little bit anxious about the exemplars and writing those, the pre-convention for the ANPD convention that is supposed to be held in San Antonio next year. Hopefully we can join in person, but there will be a pre-convention workshop that will be on writing the exemplars. So there'll be 2 NPD specialists that will be presenting that workshop. So that hasn't actually, the dates and times haven't been released yet. So make sure that you watch the convention brochures and announcements that come out.
I had a question.
Yes.
Thank you. So this is kind of getting into the weeds, but before our company had merged and before we kind of groomed a lot of our different roles and kind of, outlined the differences between the specialist and the generalist, we were all kind of in different roles or titles, if you will. But and this is where some of my questions came from. So if you did something that you felt deemed, the accomplishment was at that specialist level, I'm just giving an example. We presented a poster presentation at ANPD. However, my title at the time was not technically a specialist. And further down the road, we did get moved into those titles as we merged, with our companies. Is that problematic, or do you have to legitimately be in that title for those accomplishments?
No, you do not have to have an official title of NPD specialist. And I would say most perioperative educators are called educators. Their roles don't even say NPD.
Right.
So no, as long as your work meets the requirements of a person performing at the NPD specialist level, that qualifies. The title does not have to be there.
All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Great question. Because I think the titles do vary. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. And we're working on that too, as we present other conferences and workshops for perioperative educators to really get them more used to the nursing professional development verbiage. We do have a question in the chat. Will this be available for other specialties, i.e. med surg, critical care, etc.? Do you want to take that, Tabitha?
Well,
yes.
I think that's certainly something worth pursuing. I think that's a great question. Nothing per se in the pipeline that I'm aware of at this point, but I think that certainly brings up an intriguing question that we need to look at and definitely consider.
Tabitha?
Yeah, this
Yes,
is for
Jim.
anybody in an NPD role. It doesn't have to be perioperative. Anybody in an NPD role working as a specialist is qualified. I know, and that's one of the reasons ANPD, like Tabitha talked about, is presenting this at their conference next year as a pre-workshop, is so that everybody, you know, who's eligible in this role can do it. CCI just happens to be the one that's offering the certification. So we love to have OR nurses who are in this role do this, but any specialty can come to CCI and do this certification. Sorry, I cut you off, Tabitha.
No, thank you. And thank you for interjecting, because I actually, when I was reading Gert's question, actually had looked at it from the standpoint of, you know, advanced certifications in those other specialties, and had actually read kind of her question wrong. So I apologize for that. But yes, as Dawn mentioned, this particular certification is for any NPD practitioner, you know, that serves in that advanced role, regardless of maybe what the title your organization uses, or regardless of your specialty. So women and children, ED, any of those specialties, psychiatric, behavioral nursing. If you're functioning in that nursing professional development specialist role, the advanced role, we would definitely encourage you to please seek NPDA-BC certification.
Tabitha?
Yes, Jim.
Yeah, to clarify, this is Jim Stavinsky from CCI. This credential is different than many of our other credentials. You know, when you're used to talking to CCI, it's all perioperative nursing. There are many nurse educators who work in perioperative nursing, but this is specifically developed for any nurse that's functioning in this role, and subspecialties don't matter. Right at the moment, most of the people we've been working with on their portfolios are not perioperative nurse educators. We hope this will be an opportunity for perioperative nurse educators, because there's a lot of them, but it is open to any specialty. It's the role that matters, you know, not the unit that you're working on.
Yeah, so for those of you that are in the perioperative arena, if you have colleagues that kind of or counterparts that fulfill the nursing professional development advanced role in those other entities, please share with them so they can pursue this certification as well. So there is a question that says, would this be included in the Success Pays program then? So Success Pays, if I'm correct, is part of ANCC, or the American Nurses Credentialing Center. So this would not be included in the Success Pays program. Another great question. Thank you. Any other questions? Thoughts, comments?
Thank you, Tabitha. Great job. I think the next slide has our contact info, including Jim's, maybe. If people do have more questions, they can certainly contact any of us at CCI.
Absolutely. So you do see that there. So Dawn, myself, and Jim Stabinsky, who's our CEO, you have the contact information there and the direct number to CCI. So as you kind of go through and learn more about this new and exciting credential and questions come up, please do not hesitate to reach out, or if you share this information with your colleagues across healthcare, please let them know and have them reach out to any of us here at CCI so we can help partner with them on their journey to NPDA-BC. And we look forward to those of you on the call. When you decide to start your journey, we look forward to partnering with you as well. So yes, thank you very much, Laura. It is our pleasure. You are certainly welcome. Any other questions before we close for the evening? All right, seeing none, we will go ahead and sign off. Everyone take care, stay safe. Thank you, Dawn. Thank you, Jim. Thank you for all the other CCI staff that are on. Thank you to all of our participants and your interest, and take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Goodbye.